Well, it's certainly time now to be harvesting some of those early summer vegetables from the garden. And one of the things that we have that we're harvesting today are beets. Beets is really a really nice crop to grow in the garden, because if you really want fresh beets and you want to make fresh beet pickles or fresh beet relish or cook Harvard beets, however you want to cook them, planting them in your garden is really a good way to do that because they are fresh. And I've had several people ask me, when do you harvest beets? Well, the obvious answer that I have is when they get large enough for whatever you want to use them for. If you want a small whole pickle beet, of course you'd want to grow them so that you would harvest them at an earlier, more tender age. If you want a larger beet that you may want to slice or cut into sections, you'd want to wait until you can get those just a little bit larger. But as you go in and harvest your beets, you can always harvest those by sort of thinning them out in the garden row, and then of course that will allow more space for them to continue. We've actually got 3 types of beets in the garden out here that we're working on today, and that's kind of interesting because there are a lot of new varieties of beets. This of course is the traditional red beet that everyone is familiar with. We also have a newer beet variety which is a white beet. It looks almost like a turnip, but yet still has the same flavor and consistency and really nice flavor as the red beet. And then also there's another beet we have, and this is called the golden or the yellow beet. So I have seen some of these fresh beet salads and cooked beet salads in which we use all 3 varieties sort of diced up together in the salad, and they really make an attractive salad. Beets do have a certainly limited period of utilization, however. As the beet gets a little bit older and a little bit larger, sometimes that beet gets kind of tough and woody. And one way to find out if the beet is still really edible is to cut that beet in sections, and you will see, and you can't see it nearly as well on the white beet, but you'll be able to see it particularly on a yellow beet or a red beet. There are concentric lines in there. And if you see those concentric lines in which some are white and then some are more dark red, and perhaps we can see it better on this one. As this beet gets red inside, then that particular beet we know is really a nice tender beet. If the beet is primarily different colors of circles, red, white, red, white, red, white, we know that beet's getting a little bit harder. Well, how long can we store beets? How long can we see them being kept before we can use them? When I get the beets, I like to wash them real well in a container, wash the soil off. Then rather than storing them with the entire top on, we can cut that beet top off and leave about an inch or 3/4 of an inch to an inch of top on that. Simply place them in a plastic bag or a grocery bag, put those in the crisper of the refrigerator, and you'll be able to keep these for several days up to 2 weeks. So beets are a good thing to have. Beets are a really interesting crop to grow in the garden because there's so many varieties now, so many choices, and they're really a very healthy crop.
When you think of beets, you're probably like me. They're dark red, they stain your hands, they stain your clothes, and if you have children, they can be one of the most disastrous things to serve if you're giving them anything in anything you ever want to see, wearing anything you ever want to see again. So some of the beets we've got this time are different. They won't have that dark red color, and they eliminate some of those disadvantages, and they have a little bit different flavor. Let's look and see what we've got first of all. Now we have the darker red beets that you traditionally think of, although they're not red on the inside, they're white. So this is going to cook up on the outside and will give some of that dyeing and pigment change that we usually think of with beets, but once you get past that and peel them off, then you're in a different situation. We have the golden beets and we have white beets. You also notice we have a lot of different sizes, and for what we're going to do today, that will make a difference. I'm going to roast these. It's roasted beets with fennel oil. Because they're different sizes, you can't cut them in half or all the pigment will come out if you're using regular red beets. And so what I'm going to do is start roasting them at 375 but as some of the smaller ones are done, I'm going to start taking them out. So you'll check them at 40 minutes, and then some of the bigger ones may actually take an hour to finish roasting. I've got one of the very small ones here. It still has the beet greens on it. This, of course, you could just boil up as beet greens and small beets, and once it's cooked, you can remove the stem. Or the roots. You do want to make sure that you clean these extremely well. Now, you don't want to use a scrub brush on something that's red or golden, because that's going to actually get through the skin. You've got to be real careful with the skin. But make sure that you scrub them up well, otherwise they're going to be gritty, and there'll be grit in amongst the stems on these small ones when you cook those. So these we're just going to organize into a pan. Now, if you're worried about color change, you're going to want to do these in separate pans, because the white one is going to pick up either one of these other colors, at least in the part that's sitting in the liquid. And you'll see that in just a minute. I've got about 1/4 of a cup of water that we're adding to that, and then either use a pan with a nice tight-fitting lid or cover it with foil. Put them in at 375 for, as I said, start checking them about 40 minutes later. When the knife goes in there easily, you know they're done. Now, at that point, you want to let them cool a bit, and here you can see that they have cooled enough. Now, some people, myself included, like to eat the stems too. This was one of the red beets that you just saw, but when you get down there, once it's cooled, you see that it's no longer red on the inside, or it never was red on the inside, but you get a nice rosy coating on it. Let's see if we can cut this one in half. And so you get a bit of a feel for that. You can see the concentric circles, but just the outside area has the color to it. This one is one of the white beets, and again you can see a little bit of the yellow here where it was roasted in the same pan with the golden beets. Let's see what we've got here, another white one. I'm sure I had a yellow one. Here it is. Now, its pigment didn't change because it was cooked with white, and that didn't affect its color. But if I would have cooked the white one or the yellow one in with red, you would have seen some of that difference in color on those too. Now, what we're going to do at this point is I've peeled them all ahead of time. We've got them down to this stage, and then we're simply going to, depending on how big you want them, I cut these into 1/6, 1/4 if they're a little smaller. You could go as small as halves. If you have little tiny ones, you could cut them or not cut them at all. But you can see what we've got here. Now, we're going to make a little bit of fennel oil to go on with this. Turn this burner on as low as we can go here. And I have about 1½ tablespoons of vegetable oil. This is olive oil. We'll put that in the pan, and we're going to heat this for about 5 minutes with a little bit of fennel seed. I've got the mortar and pestle. We don't have to thoroughly crush it. What I really want to do is just get it to the point where those flavors are starting to come out. So we're going to crush it enough to damage it, basically. And you can start to smell it. You'll know you're ready. Put that in the olive oil. Try and keep it in the oil. Keep the heat real low. After about 5 minutes, it'll be ready to go. And what you do is get a little bowl and a strainer, pour the oil through so that you get the seeds back out, because those are too crunchy to eat. All right, we need about 3/4 of a pound of the beets. And if you have bright red beets and you don't want the colors to affect each other or impact the golden ones, you'd probably want to do these in separate containers. But what we're going to do here is simply combine the different colors of beets. Yeah, get those ones that I didn't cut out. And so you get a lot of color here. And then I have 1½ tablespoons of vegetable oil that I've strained already, and I'm combining it with about 1 tablespoon of sherry vinegar or any other light colored vinegar that you might have. Sprinkle this over the beets, and then we're going to stir it together. Now, there's not a lot of more effort to this. It's very easy to do. You can do the beets ahead on one day, come home from work, get your beets cleaned and roasted, peel them the next day. They'll keep just fine with the peel on. And then go ahead and finish them off the day after that when you're actually ready to use them. In fact, they'll keep a few days in the refrigerator with the peeling on them. Simply jumble them into a serving dish. See if I can get some of the rosy ones from down below. And I'm going to put on here just a couple of slices of the traditional red beet, just for accent. And then sprinkle it with fresh chives or green onion tops. and that's all there is to it. It's very easy, something a little bit different. Most people will not expect it to be beets. The white ones, in fact, look a whole lot like onions, and so they may be real surprised when they bite in. The lesser colored beets are sweeter, and so if you have somebody who didn't like beets before, this may be something that they want to try. I hope you will. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.